The yellow bus rolled to a stop at 7:43 a.m. But something was wrong. The children inside weren't laughing, they were crying. And standing in the road ahead, blocking the path, were three men with tire irons and cold smiles. If you're moved by stories of silent heroes who protect the innocent, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications, because what happens next will restore your faith in humanity. Driver Helen Marquez had been behind the wheel for 19 years. She'd seen snow, floods, and mechanical breakdowns. But she'd never seen this. Three figures stepping out of a rusted pickup truck, spreading across the asphalt like a human roadblock. The youngest child, a 6-year-old girl named Emma, pressed her face against the window and whispered, "Miss Helen, I'm scared." Helen reached for her radio, but before she could speak, the rumble began. Low at first, then louder, until the entire road seemed to vibrate with the sound of engines, dozens of them, rising like thunder from the hills behind. 72 motorcycles appeared over the ridge. Chrome flashed in the morning sun. Leather vests bore the same patch, a shield with 2 crossed wrenches, and the words, "Iron Vigil MC." And at the front of the formation rode a man named Clay Harlow, grey-haired, scarred, and silent as stone. He didn't need to speak. The men with tire irons took one look at the wall of bikers closing in and ran. But Clay didn't stop there, because this wasn't just about scaring off 3 thugs on a Tuesday morning. This was about a promise he'd made 15 years ago to a friend who never came home from war. A friend whose daughter now sat on that bus, trembling and trying not to cry. What began as a convoy escort turned into something much bigger. A community that had been silenced by fear. A school board that had ignored threats for months. And a brotherhood of riders who decided that some battles are worth fighting, not with fists, but with presence, loyalty, and the unshakable belief that children deserve to feel safe on their way to school. This is the story of 7 mornings, 7 rides, and the moment an entire town realized that protection doesn't always come from badges. Sometimes it comes from the roar of engines and the quiet resolve of those who refuse to look away. Chapter 1. The Roadblock. The yellow bus slowed to a crawl at 7:43 a.m., and Helen Marquez felt her stomach tighten. 19 years behind the wheel had taught her to trust her instincts, and right now, every instinct was screaming wrong. 3 men stood in the middle of County Road 14, arms crossed, faces hard. The one in the center tapped a tire iron against his palm, slowly, deliberately, like he had all the time in the world. Helen's hand moved to the radio clipped to her dashboard. "Dispatch, this is Bus 47. I've got a situation on County 14, mile marker 9. 3 individuals blocking the road, requesting, 'Keep driving,' a voice crackled back, static heavy, distracted. 'If they don't move, go around.' Helen looked at the ditch on either side of the narrow road. Deep, muddy, no way through. Behind her, 23 children sat in silence. No giggles, no shouting, just the kind of quiet that comes when fear settles into small bones. Emma Rodriguez, 6 years old with dark curls and a backpack covered in unicorn stickers, leaned forward. "Miss Helen, are those bad men?" Helen forced a smile. "It's okay, sweetheart, just stay in your seat." But it wasn't okay, and Emma knew it. The man with the tire iron stepped closer. He knocked on the door with the metal bar, 3 slow, deliberate taps. Then he grinned. Not a friendly grin. The kind that made Helen's hand move toward the lever that would seal the door shut. "Open up, Helen," he called through the glass. His voice was muffled but clear enough. "We just want to talk." She didn't move. The second man, taller, thinner, with a stained baseball cap, circled toward the back of the bus. Helen watched him in the mirror. He dragged the tire iron along the yellow metal, leaving a thin scratch that screamed in the morning silence. Emma started to cry, and that's when Helen heard it. A rumble. low and distant at first, like thunder rolling in from the west. But it wasn't thunder. It was something else, something alive. The man at the door heard it too. He turned, frowning, squinting toward the ridge behind the bus. The rumble grew louder, and then they appeared. Motorcycles, dozens of them, cresting the hill in a perfect V formation, chrome flashing in the early light, engines roaring like a stampede of iron horses. They moved with precision, not chaos, but control. A wall of leather and steel rolling toward the bus with the kind of inevitability that made grown men step back. The lead rider was a man in his late 50s, grey hair pulled back in a tight ponytail, a scar running from his left temple to his jaw. His vest bore a patch, a shield with 2 crossed wrenches and the words Iron Vigil MC, founder. His name was Clay Harlow. And he didn't slow down. The 3 men in the road scattered. The one with the tire iron dropped it and bolted for the pickup truck. The driver floored the gas, kicking up gravel and dirt as they tore off down a side road. 72 motorcycles surrounded the bus, not threatening, protective, like a living fortress of chrome and exhaust fumes. Clay pulled up alongside Helen's window. He didn't smile, didn't wave, just gave a single nod. Helen exhaled for what felt like the first time in 5 minutes. Behind her, Emma stopped crying. She pressed her face to the window, watching the bikers with wide eyes. "Miss Helen," she whispered, "are they superheroes?" Helen looked at Clay, at the men and women on their bikes, engines idling, arms crossed, eyes scanning the road like sentries. "Yeah, sweetheart," Helen said quietly. "I think they are." Clay raised a hand. The convoy roared to life. And together, bus and bikes, they rolled toward Redwood Elementary. No one blocked their path again. Chapter 2. The call that changed everything. Clay Harlow hadn't touched his phone in 4 hours. He'd been in the garage since dawn, rebuilding a carburetor on a 78 shovelhead that had been sitting in pieces for 6 months. Grease under his nails, coffee gone cold. The kind of morning where the world outside didn't exist. Then the phone rang. He wiped his hands on a rag and glanced at the screen. Unknown number. He almost let it go to voicemail. But something, instinct maybe, or the ghost of a promise, made him answer. "Yeah." "Is this Clay Harlow?" A woman's voice, tight, scared. "Who's asking?" "My name is Helen Marquez. I drive bus 47 for Redwood School District." She paused. Clay heard the tremble in her breath. "I need help, and I was told you're the man who doesn't look away." Clay set down the wrench. "What happened?" 3 men stopped my bus this morning, blocked the road. They had weapons. 23 kids were on board." Her voice cracked. "The police said they'd look into it. Dispatch told me to drive around next time, but there is no next time, Mr. Harlow. These kids are terrified, and I can't protect them alone." Clay closed his eyes. The carburetor could wait. "Where are you?" "Redwood Elementary, 1247 Pine Street." "I'll be there in 20 minutes. He hung up, grabbed his vest, and made another call. 30 minutes later, Clay stood in the parking lot of Redwood Elementary, surrounded by 7 men and 3 women, all members of Iron Vigil MC, all veterans, all people who understood what it meant to protect those who couldn't protect themselves. Helen Marquez stood near the bus, arms wrapped around herself like she was trying to hold her composure together by sheer will. Clay approached. "Tell me everything." Helen did. The roadblock, the tire irons, the scratches on the bus, the way the youngest kids had cried, the way dispatch had shrugged it off like it was nothing. "How long has this been happening?" Clay asked. 2 weeks. Different men. Same message. Stay out of our business." Helen looked at the ground. "There's a house on County Road 14, boarded windows. Cars coming and going at all hours. The kids say they see people there, scared people, but no one does anything." Clay's jaw tightened. "Anyone hurt?" "Not yet, but it's coming. I can feel it." Clay turned to his crew. We ride tomorrow, 7:15 a.m., full escort. No one touches this bus. A woman named Iris, 43, former army medic, tattoos running up both arms, stepped forward. What's the plan if they show up again? We stand between them and the bus, Clay said simply. No violence, no threats, just presence. We show them that these kids aren't alone anymore. A younger rider, Marcus, frowned. And if they don't back down? Clay looked at him. Then we don't either. Helen's eyes filled with tears. Why are you doing this? You don't even know these kids. Udi. Clay was quiet for a long moment. Then he reached into his vest and pulled out a photograph. Worn, creased, a picture of a young girl with dark curls and a gap-toothed smile. Her name was Lily, Clay said softly. She was my best friend's daughter. He died in Afghanistan in 2009. Before he left, he made me promise if anything happened to him, I'd look after her. Clay's voice didn't waver. I kept that promise, got her through school, walked her down the aisle at her wedding, and now she has a daughter of her own. He looked at Helen. Her name is Emma. She's 6 years old, and she rides your bus. Helen's hand flew to her mouth. Clay tucked the photo away. So yeah, I know these kids. Are you watching from somewhere that values protection over silence? Drop your location in the comments. Let's see where the Guardians are watching from. Chapter 3. The First Ride. The sun hadn't cleared the ridge when 72 motorcycles assembled in the parking lot of Mel's Diner, 6 miles west of Redwood Elementary. No one spoke. They just checked their bikes, adjusted mirrors, and waited. Clay stood at the front, helmet in hand, scanning the faces around him. Veterans, mechanics, nurses, a retired firefighter, a woman who ran a food truck, people who'd seen darkness and chosen to stand against it. Listen up, Clay said. His voice carried without shouting. We're not looking for a fight. We're not vigilantes. We're an escort. Our job is to make sure Bus 47 gets to school safely. That's it. No confrontations, no threats, just presence. Iris raised a hand. What if they try to stop us? We don't stop, Clay said. We keep moving. We surround the bus. And we make it clear. Anyone who wants to hurt those kids has to go through all of us first. Marcus nodded. What if the cops show up? Then we cooperate. We're not breaking any laws. We're riding on public roads, escorting a school bus. If they have a problem with that, they can take it up with me. No one argued. At 7:12 a.m., the convoy rolled out. Helen was already in the driver's seat when the sound reached her. A low rumble that grew louder with every second. She looked in the mirror and saw them, a river of chrome and leather pouring down County Road 14 like a steel tide. The children pressed their faces to the windows. "Miss Helen!" Emma shouted. "The superheroes are back!" Helen smiled. For the first time in 2 weeks, she didn't feel afraid. Clay pulled up alongside the bus and gave her a nod. Helen hit the gas. The convoy moved as one, bikes flanking the bus on both sides, behind and ahead, a moving fortress. They passed the boarded house at mile marker 9. 2 men stood on the porch, watching. One reached for his phone, the other just stared. The convoy didn't slow down. At 7:41 a.m., Bus 47 pulled into the school parking lot, surrounded by 72 motorcycles. Parents stared. Teachers came outside. Principal Dawson, the thin man with wire-rimmed glasses, hurried down the steps, looking confused and slightly alarmed. What is this?" he stammered. Clay dismounted. "Protection." "I don't understand. Who authorized this?" "No one," Clay said calmly. "And everyone. These kids were threatened. We're making sure it doesn't happen again." Dawson opened his mouth to argue, but then he saw the children stepping off the bus, smiling, waving at the bikers. Emma ran up to Clay and threw her arms around his leg. "Thank you, Mr. Clay," she whispered. Clay's expression softened. He knelt down. "You're safe now, kiddo. All of you." Dawson closed his mouth. He didn't have an argument for that. As the children filed into school, Clay turned to his crew. Same time tomorrow. Watching from the United States at 7:43 a.m., the time when courage showed up on two wheels. Chapter 4. The Pushback. The second ride went smoother. No roadblocks, no men with tire irons, just the rumble of engines and the laughter of children who, for the first time in weeks, felt safe. But on the third morning, everything changed. Clay arrived at Mel's diner at 6:50 a.m. to find two sheriff's deputies waiting in the parking lot. One was young, maybe 25, with a buzz cut and a nervous expression. The other was older, Sheriff Dale Whitmore, a man Clay had known for 15 years, not friends, but not enemies either. Whitmore leaned against his cruiser, arms crossed. "Morning, Clay." "Dale. Heard you've been running a convoy, escorting the school bus." "That's right. Mind telling me why?" Clay met his eyes. "Because someone has to." Whitmore sighed. "Look, I get it. You want to help, but you're making people nervous. We've had calls, complaints. Some folks think you're intimidating." "Intimidating who?" Clay asked. "The kids? The parents? Or the men who blocked a bus full of children 2 weeks ago?" Whitmore's jaw tightened. "We're looking into that." "Are you?" Clay's voice didn't rise. It didn't need to. Because Helen Marquez filed a report. Dispatch has the radio logs, and as far as I can tell, no one's done a damn thing. The younger deputy shifted uncomfortably. Whitmore rubbed his face. "It's complicated, Clay. There's jurisdictional issues. The house you're talking about, it's on county land. We've been coordinating with—" "Don't," Clay said quietly. "Don't give me bureaucracy when kids are crying themselves to sleep." Whitmore looked away. "I'm not saying you're wrong, but I am saying you need to be careful. You keep rolling up with 70 bikes every morning, someone's going to escalate. And when that happens, people get hurt." "People are already hurt," Clay said. "They're just small and scared. And no one's listening." Whitmore was silent for a long moment. Then he pushed off the cruiser. "I can't stop you from riding on public roads, but I'm telling you, as someone who doesn't want to see this go sideways, be smart. Don't give anyone a reason to shut you down." Clay nodded once. "We're just escorting a bus, Dale, that's all." Whitmore got in his cruiser and drove away. Marcus walked over. "Think he's on our side?" "I think he's stuck," Clay said, "between doing what's right and keeping his job." He pulled on his gloves. "But we're not stuck. Let's ride." That afternoon, Clay got a call from an unknown number. He almost ignored it, but something made him answer. "Mr. Harlow." A man's voice, smooth, calm, the kind of calm that felt rehearsed. "Who's this?" "My name's not important. What's important is that you're making waves, and waves have a way of pulling people under." Clay's grip on the phone tightened. "Is that a threat?" "It's advice. You've got a good thing going with your little club. Don't ruin it by sticking your nose where it doesn't belong." "And where does it belong?" Clay asked. "Anywhere but County Road 14. The line went dead. Clay stared at the phone for a moment. Then he called Iris. "We're riding tomorrow," he said, "and we're riding every day after that until this is over." Chapter 5. The Stand. The fourth morning began with rain, cold, relentless, the kind that soaked through leather and turned roads into mirrors of black asphalt. But 72 motorcycles still rolled out at 7:12 a.m. Helen saw them through the fog and felt her chest tighten with gratitude. She'd half expected them to cancel, to decide it wasn't worth the trouble. But there they were, chrome glinting through the rain, engines roaring defiance at the grey sky. Clay pulled up alongside her window. Water dripped from his helmet. He gave her the same nod he'd given every morning. She smiled, and for the first time in years, Helen believed in something bigger than fear. The convoy moved through the rain like a steel river, past the boarded house, past the place where 3 men had once stood with tire irons, past the places where silence had once meant danger. But this morning, silence meant something else. It meant no one dared to stand in their way. At school, Principal Dawson stood under an umbrella, watching the bus pull in. He'd stopped questioning the bikers, stopped asking for permits or authorization, because the truth was undeniable. Since they'd started riding, not a single child had been threatened. Not a single parent had called in tears. The numbers didn't lie. Attendance was up, behavioral incidents were down, and for the first time in months, Redwood Elementary felt safe. Dawson walked over to Clay as the children filed inside. "I owe you an apology." Clay looked at him. For what? For doubting. For worrying about appearances instead of... Dawson gestured toward the children. Instead of them. Clay was quiet for a moment. "You didn't doubt. You were scared. That's different." He pulled off his gloves. "Fear makes us careful, but it shouldn't make us silent." Dawson nodded. "How long will you keep doing this?" "As long as it takes. And if someone tries to stop you," Clay's expression didn't change, "then we'll deal with that when it comes." That evening, Clay sat in his garage, staring at the photograph of Lily and Emma, the little girl in the unicorn backpack, the promise he'd made 15 years ago. His phone buzzed, a text from Iris. "We're in this, all of us, whatever comes." Clay smiled. Not a big smile. Just enough. Because promises weren't about convenience. They were about showing up, every morning, rain or shine, scared or not, and tomorrow he'd show up again. If this story is reminding you why loyalty matters, hit that like button, because the next chapter changes everything. Chapter 6. The Threat That Came in the Night. Clay was asleep when the brick came through his window. It shattered the glass at 2:17 a.m., landing on the bedroom floor with a dull thud. Clay was on his feet before the sound fully registered, instincts honed by years overseas kicking in. He grabbed the Louisville Slugger he kept beside the bed and moved toward the window, staying low, eyes scanning the dark yard outside. Nothing. No movement. No engine sounds. Just the hiss of rain and the distant bark of a dog. He looked down at the brick. A piece of paper was wrapped around it, held in place with a rubber band. Clay peeled it off and unfolded it under the dim light of his bedside lamp. The message was typed. No signature, no flourishes. Last warning. Back off, or we start with the little ones. Clay read it 3 times. His jaw tightened. His hands didn't shake, and they never shook anymore, but something cold settled in his chest, not fear, resolve. He took a photo of the note, called Iris. She answered on the second ring, voice groggy. "Clay, what's wrong?" "They made a move, brick through my window, threat against the kids." Iris was silent for 2 seconds. Then her voice came back sharp and clear. "I'm calling everyone. We meet at the diner in an hour." "Iris, don't even think about telling me to stand down," she said. "This just became personal for all of us." Clay looked at the shattered glass on his floor. 1 hour. By 3:30 a.m., 42 members of Iron Vigil MC sat in Mel's diner, nursing coffee and fury. The rain hammered against the windows. Lightning flickered in the distance. Clay stood at the front, holding the note. "This is what we're dealing with. They're not going to scare us off with roadblocks anymore. They're going after intimidation, threats, and they're willing to target children to make their point." Marcus slammed his fist on the table. "So what do we do? We can't just keep riding and hoping they back down." "No," Clay agreed, "we can't. Which is why tomorrow we're not just escorting the bus. We're taking it to the sheriff, with every parent who wants to come, with every teacher who's had enough. We're making this public, loud, undeniable." "And if the sheriff still does nothing?" asked a rider named Hank, a former Marine with a prosthetic leg. Then we go to the news, Clay said. We go to the state. We don't stop until someone listens. Iris leaned forward. What about tonight? You think they're done? Clay shook his head. No. Which is why I'm not sleeping at my place. And neither should anyone else whose name is attached to this. We rotate watch, 2-person teams, eyes on the school, the bus depot, and Helen's house. No one argued. Iris stood. I'll take first watch at Helen's, Marcus nodded. I've got the depot. Clay looked around the room. Exhausted faces, determined eyes. This is the moment they're counting on us to break, to decide it's not worth it. He paused. But it is, because if we walk away now, those kids will know that fear wins. And I'm not teaching them that lesson. 72 hands raised their coffee mugs. Iron vigil, Clay said quietly. Iron vigil, they echoed. At 5:30 a.m., Clay sat outside Redwood Elementary in his truck, engine off. Rain streaming down the windshield. He hadn't slept, didn't plan to. His phone buzzed, a text from Helen. Thank you for not running. Clay typed back, we don't run. At 7:12 a.m., 72 motorcycles rolled out into the rain once more. But this time they weren't just protecting a bus, they were protecting a promise. Chapter 7. The day the town showed up. Morning broke gray and cold. The rain had stopped, but the sky hung low, heavy with the weight of what was coming. Clay stood in the parking lot of Mel's diner, watching the convoy assemble. 72 bikes. But today there were others. Cars, trucks, minivans, parents. Helen Marquez stepped out of her sedan, flanked by a dozen other parents, mothers with set jaws, fathers with crossed arms. Emma's mother, Sofia Rodriguez, walked up to Clay. Her eyes were red, but her voice was steady. We're riding with you, she said. All of us. Clay looked at the growing crowd, 20 parents, then 30, then 50, teachers from Redwood Elementary, a school bus driver from the next district over, even old Mrs. Kemp, who ran the general store and hadn't driven farther than church in 5 years. Principal Dawson arrived in a compact sedan, looking pale but determined. He walked straight to Clay. I'm coming too. I should have done this weeks ago. Clay nodded. Then let's go. At 8:15 a.m., a convoy unlike anything the county had ever seen rolled toward the sheriff's office, 72 motorcycles flanked by over 60 vehicles, a river of chrome and determination 2 miles long. People stopped on sidewalks to stare. Shop owners came to their windows. A man mowing his lawn turned off the mower and just watched. By the time they reached the sheriff's office, a crowd had formed. Local news vans pulled up. Cameras appeared. Phones lifted to record. Sheriff Whitmore stood on the steps, looking like a man who'd just watched a tidal wave crest the horizon. Clay dismounted. The crowd parted. He walked forward, holding the note from the brick. Dale, Clay said, we need to talk. Whitmore glanced at the cameras, at the parents, at the children who'd come with their mothers and fathers, holding handmade signs that read, Protect our kids, and we deserve safety. Whitmore exhaled slowly. Inside. The sheriff's office wasn't built for 70 people, but they crammed in anyway. Clay stood at the front, Helen beside him, Sophia holding Emma's hand. Whitmore sat behind his desk, flanked by 2 deputies. His face was unreadable. You've got my attention, he said quietly. Now tell me what you want. Clay placed the note on the desk. Last night, someone threw a brick through my window with this attached. It's a threat against children. We've filed reports. We've called dispatch. We've done everything by the book, and nothing has happened. Whitmore picked up the note, read it, and set it down. His jaw worked. I've been trying to build a case, but these things take time. We don't have time, Sophia cut in. Her voice shook, but she didn't back down. My daughter is 6 years old. She has nightmares. She wakes up crying because she's scared to get on the bus. How much more time do you need? Whitmore closed his eyes. There are jurisdictional complications. The property in question. "I don't care about jurisdiction," Helen said. "I care about 23 kids who are terrified, and I care that every morning I don't know if today's the day someone gets hurt." The room was silent. Whitmore looked at the crowd, at the cameras outside, at the note on his desk. Then he stood. "You're right," he said. "I've been playing it safe, worried about stepping on toes, following procedure." He looked at Clay. "But procedure doesn't mean a damn thing if kids aren't safe." He turned to his deputies. "Get me a warrant for the property on County Road 14. I want a full team. Today." One deputy blinked. "Sir, that's going to take—" "Today," Whitmore repeated. "I don't care who I have to call. Make it happen." The deputy nodded and left. Whitmore looked back at Clay. "You've been right all along, and I'm sorry it took this long for me to admit it." Clay extended his hand. Whitmore shook it. "Thank you," Clay said. Whitmore nodded. "Now let's finish this." Chapter 8. The Raid. The warrant came through at 2:47 p.m. Sheriff Whitmore stood in his office, phone pressed to his ear, listening to the district judge recite the approval. His hand trembled slightly as he wrote down the case number. 16 years on the job, and he'd never felt the weight of a piece of paper quite like this. He hung up and looked at Clay, who'd been sitting in the waiting area for 3 hours. "We're good to go." Clay stood. "When?" "Now." Whitmore grabbed his vest and radio. "I'm calling in state police, SWAT from the county, and a crisis counselor. If what we think is happening in that house is real, we're going to need one." By 3:15 p.m., the convoy assembled half a mile west of County Road 14, 6 sheriff's vehicles, 2 state police SUVs, a black SWAT van, an ambulance on standby, and lining the shoulder of the road, 72 motorcycles, silent, engines off, waiting. Clay stood with his crew near the bikes. They couldn't go on the property. Whitmore had made that clear, but they could bear witness. They could be present. Iris crossed her arms, staring toward the tree line that hid the house. "You think they're still there?" "They haven't moved in 2 weeks," Clay said. "They think they've won, that we gave up." Marcus kicked at the gravel. "Hope they're ready to be wrong." Whitmore walked over, tactical vest strapped tight, radio clipped to his shoulder. He looked at Clay. "This is it. Whatever we find in there, good or bad, it's because you didn't back down." Clay met his eyes. "Just find them. Whatever they've done, whoever's in there, find them." Whitmore nodded and returned to his team. At 3:22 p.m., the convoy rolled forward. The house sat at the end of a gravel driveway, surrounded by overgrown weeds and rusted chain-link fence, boarded windows, sagging porch. A pickup truck parked near the side door, covered in mud and dents. Whitmore raised his megaphone. "This is the sheriff's department. We have a warrant to search this property. Exit the building with your hands visible. You have 30 seconds to comply." The forest seemed to hold its breath. No birds, no wind. Just the crackle of radios and the distant hum of idling engines. 15 seconds passed, then movement, a shadow behind one of the boarded windows. A flash of pale skin, someone peeking through a crack. "Contact," one of the SWAT officers murmured into his radio. "Second floor window, east side." Whitmore raised the megaphone again. "This is your final warning. Exit now, or we will enter by force." The front door exploded open. 2 men burst out, sprinting toward the tree line. One was tall, mid-30s, wearing a stained hoodie. The other was younger, maybe 22, tattoos covering his arms. "Runners!" a deputy shouted. 4 officers peeled off in pursuit. The younger man made it 15 feet before he tripped over a root and went down hard. Deputies were on him in seconds, hands zip-tied behind his back. The taller man was faster. He vaulted the fence and disappeared into the trees. "K9 unit, go!" Whitmore barked. A German shepherd launched from the back of a cruiser, handler sprinting behind. The dog hit the fence line and vanished into the woods, barking, echoing through the trees. 3 minutes later, the handler's voice crackled over the radio. "Suspect in custody. He's down. Non-lethal. Requesting medical." Whitmore exhaled. Copy. Secure him and bring him back. Inside the house, the SWAT team moved room by room, peeling wallpaper, broken furniture, empty beer cans scattered across the floor. The air stank of mildew and something worse, something chemical and wrong. "Clear!" an officer called from the kitchen. "Clear!" another echoed from the living room, then a voice from the basement stairs. "We've got something." Whitmore descended carefully, flashlight cutting through the darkness. The stairs groaned under his weight. At the bottom, he found a heavy steel door, padlocked from the outside. "Bolt cutters!" Whitmore ordered. An officer handed them over. Whitmore snapped the lock and pulled the door open. The smell hit him first. Sweat, fear, human waste. 6 people sat huddled against the far wall, blinking in the sudden light. 4 women, 2 teenagers, all thin, all filthy, all staring at the officers like they didn't believe what they were seeing. One of the women, maybe 40, dark hair matted with dirt, raised a trembling hand to shield her eyes. "Please," she whispered, "please don't hurt us." Whitmore's throat tightened. He holstered his weapon and raised both hands. "You're safe now. We're the sheriff's department. We're here to help." The woman started to cry. A teenage girl, 15, maybe 16, crawled forward. Her wrists were bruised, her eyes hollow. They said no one was looking for us." Whitmore knelt down, his voice soft. "We're looking, and we found you." Upstairs, the evidence team began cataloguing. Burner phones, laptops, ledgers with names and numbers, a lockbox containing 9 fake IDs, a duffel bag stuffed with $23,000 in cash, and in the back bedroom, chained to a radiator, they found a teenage boy. Hispanic, maybe 17, unconscious, but breathing. "Medic!" an officer shouted. Paramedics rushed in. The boy's pulse was weak, his breathing shallow. They worked fast. Oxygen mask, AV line, stretcher. "He's malnourished," one paramedic said. "Dehydrated, possible infection. We need to move now." They carried him out. By 4:30 p.m., 4 men were in custody. The victims were being treated in ambulances, wrapped in thermal blankets, sipping water slowly under the watchful eyes of paramedics and a crisis counselor. Whitmore stood near the tree line, watching the chaos. His radio crackled constantly. State police coordinating, FBI being notified, Homeland Security expressing interest. This wasn't just a local bust anymore. This was human trafficking across state lines, international ties, the kind of case that would take years to fully unravel. But right now, 6 people were free, and that was enough. Clay watched from the road as the ambulances pulled away, lights flashing. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stood with his hands in his pockets, watching the house that had haunted this community for months finally fall silent. Iris walked over. "They got them." Clay nodded. 6 people, Iris continued. 6 people who thought no one cared. Clay's jaw tightened. They were wrong. Whitmore approached, pulling off his tactical gloves. He looked exhausted, haunted, but there was something else in his eyes, something like relief. "We found a girl," Whitmore said quietly. 15 years old. Name's Carla Mendez. Missing from El Paso for 7 months. Her family's been notified. Clay closed his eyes briefly. "She okay?" "Physically? She'll recover. Mentally." Whitmore trailed off. "That's going to take time. What about the others? 2 from Arizona, 1 from New Mexico, 3 from Mexico. No documentation, but we're working with consulates." Whitmore rubbed his face. "This operation's been running for at least 2 years, maybe longer. We're going to be untangling this for months." Clay looked at the house. "You think there are more?" "I know there are," Whitmore said grimly. "But today, we saved these 6, and that's a win." Clay extended his hand. Whitmore shook it. "Thank you," Clay said, "for listening." "Thank you," Whitmore replied, "for not letting me forget." As the sun dipped below the ridge, casting long shadows across County Road 14, the bikers mounted their motorcycles. Engines roared to life, not aggressive, not triumphant, but steady, purposeful. Clay led the convoy back toward town, the house shrinking in his mirror. He thought about Emma, about Lily, about the promise he'd made 15 years ago. Some promises took time to keep, but they were always worth it. Chapter 9. The last ride for now. 3 weeks later, Bus 47 rolled down County Road 14 at 7:43 a.m., under a sky so clear it looked painted. The air smelled like pine and morning frost, the kind of morning that felt like a second chance. Helen Marquez glanced in her rearview mirror and smiled. The convoy was smaller now, just 12 bikes instead of 72, but they were there. Clay at the front, Iris beside him, Marcus bringing up the rear. They didn't need to be there anymore. The house was empty, sealed with police tape and scheduled for demolition. The 4 men arrested were awaiting trial, federal charges, no bail, facing decades. The victims were safe, reunited with families or placed in protective care. But the bikers came anyway, because showing up wasn't about necessity, it was about keeping your word. Helen keyed her radio. "Morning, Clay." His voice came back, warm and steady. "Morning, Helen. How's the road looking?" "Clear, quiet, perfect. That's what we like to hear." At Redwood Elementary, the morning routine had changed. Parents no longer dropped their kids off with worried glances over their shoulders. Teachers didn't scan the parking lot nervously. The air felt lighter. Principal Dawson stood on the steps, holding a cup of coffee, watching the bus pull in, flanked by motorcycles. 3 weeks ago, he'd been terrified of this image. Now, it felt like home. The children poured off the bus, laughing and shoving each other playfully. Emma Rodriguez was the last one out, unicorn backpack bouncing against her shoulders. She spotted Clay and sprinted toward him. "Mr. Clay! Mr. Clay!" She threw her arms around his leg before he could even dismount. Clay laughed and knelt down. "Hey, kiddo, you're gonna knock me over one of these days. Guess what? My birthday party is this Saturday. Mom says you have to come, and Miss Iris too, and Mr. Marcus." Sofia Rodriguez walked over, smiling apologetically. "She's been planning this for 2 weeks. If you can't make it, I understand." "We'll be there," Clay said. He looked at Iris and Marcus. "Right?" Iris grinned. "Wouldn't miss it." Marcus saluted. "I'll bring the ice cream." Emma bounced on her toes. "It's going to be the best party ever." Sophia's eyes glistened. I don't know how to thank you for everything." Clay stood, shaking his head. "You don't need to thank us. Just keep being a great mom. That's all the thanks we need." Sophia hugged him. It surprised Clay. He wasn't much of a hugger, but he didn't pull away. When she finally let go, she wiped her eyes quickly. "You gave us our lives back," she whispered. "You gave Emma her childhood back." Clay didn't trust his voice, so he just nodded. Inside the school, Principal Dawson addressed the morning assembly. 200 students sat cross-legged in the gymnasium, teachers lining the walls. "I want to talk about something important," Dawson began. 3 weeks ago, some very bad people tried to make this community afraid. They tried to make you afraid, and for a while they succeeded." The gym was silent. But then something happened. People decided that fear wasn't going to win. People decided to stand up, to show up, to protect each other. Dawson looked toward the windows, where the motorcycles were parked outside. Some of those people rode motorcycles, some drove cars, some walked, but they all had one thing in common. They cared. About you, about safety, about doing what was right even when it was hard. He paused. "Today, I want us to remember that. The next time you feel scared, the next time something seems too big to face, remember that you're not alone. There are people who will stand with you, who will fight for you, who will ride through the rain just to make sure you get to school safely. Emma raised her hand. Mr. Dawson, are the bikers superheroes? Dawson smiled. I think they're something better. They're neighbors, friends, people who kept a promise. He looked around the room. And that's something we can all be. After school, Clay returned to his garage. The shovelhead was finally finished. Rebuilt engine, fresh paint, new chrome. 15 months of work. But it purred like a dream. He was wiping down the gas tank when his phone buzzed. A text from Lily. Dad told me everything. About the convoy, the rescue. Emma, I'm so proud of you. Clay typed back, just keeping my word. Lily's response came immediately. You always do. That's why he trusted you. Clay stared at the message. He thought about his best friend, Jackson Rodriguez, killed by an IED outside Kandahar in 2009. He thought about the promise he'd made in a hospital room, holding Jackson's hand as the monitors flatlined. Take care of Lily. Promise me. I promise. 15 years later, that promise had grown. It wasn't just Lily anymore, it was Emma. It was 23 kids on a bus. It was 6 victims in a basement who thought no one was coming. Promises had a way of expanding when you honored them. Saturday arrived bright and cold. Emma's birthday party was held in the backyard of Sophia's house. Streamers, balloons, a bounce house shaped like a castle. 12 kids screamed and laughed. Parents stood around talking, sipping lemonade. And in the driveway, 12 motorcycles gleamed in the afternoon sun. Clay arrived with Iris, Marcus, and Hank. They brought gifts. A stuffed unicorn, a helmet decorated with stars, a toy motorcycle that made engine noises when you pressed a button. Emma shrieked and ran to them. You came. You really came. Told you we would. Clay said. The party was chaos, beautiful, loud, joyful chaos. Kids ate cake, adults laughed, music played from a portable speaker, and for a few hours the world felt safe. Near the end, Sophia pulled Clay aside. Can I show you something? She led him to the garage. Inside, pinned to a corkboard, were drawings. Dozens of them, all made by Emma. Pictures of motorcycles, pictures of bikers with shields and stars, pictures of a little girl holding hands with a grey-haired man on a motorcycle. At the bottom of each drawing, in crayon, my hero, Mr. Clay. Clay stared at the wall, throat tight. She draws one every night, Sophia said softly, before bed. She says it helps her remember that there are good people in the world. Clay couldn't speak. Sophia touched his arm. You didn't just save her. You taught her that courage is real, that promises matter, that people show up. She smiled through tears. Thank you for being the kind of man Jackson knew you'd be. That evening, as the sun set over the ridge, Clay sat on his bike in the driveway of Sophia's house. The party was winding down. Kids were leaving. Parents were packing up leftovers. Emma ran over one last time, clutching her stuffed unicorn. Mr. Clay, will you still come see me, even though the bad people are gone? Clay knelt down. You bet. Every chance I get. Promise? Clay smiled. Promise. Emma hugged him. Okay, I love you, Mr. Clay. Something broke open in Clay's chest. I love you too, kiddo. 2 hours later, Clay sat in his garage, staring at the photo of Jackson, Lily, and Emma, the promise he'd made 15 years ago, the promise that had led to 23 kids being protected, 6 victims being saved, a community learning to stand together. His phone buzzed, a group text from the Iron Vigil crew. Iris, next week there's a shelter downtown that needs volunteers. Who's in? Marcus, I'm in. Hank, count me in. 12 more responses followed in quick succession. Clay smiled and typed, I'm in, because promises weren't events. They were a way of life, and once you started keeping them, it was hard to stop. He looked at the shovelhead, ready to ride, ready for whatever came next. Outside, the stars appeared one by one. The world turned. And somewhere, a little girl with a unicorn backpack fell asleep drawing pictures of heroes. If this story reminded you why courage, loyalty, and promises matter, subscribe and turn on notifications, because the world needs more people who show up when it's hard, who stand when others sit, who ride through the rain because they gave their word. Thank you for being here. Thank you for listening. And remember, you don't need a motorcycle to be someone's hero. You just need to care enough to show up, ride safe, keep your promises, and never forget, one person standing up can change everything.